Okay, so something huge just happened, and it's kind of sent the financial world into a spin. The United States government, yeah, the government, just made a massive bet on Bitcoin. You heard that right. The thing that was once seen as, this fringe internet money is now being treated like a national treasure. So let's break down what's going on with this landmark decision and what it could mean for the future of, well, everything.
And here it is. This is the line that's causing all the fuss. A single sentence from a new executive order. It is the policy of the United States to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, wow, it's direct, it's clear, no room for interpretation. But to really get a grip on just how big a deal this is, we need to talk about what a strategic reserve actually is.
So when you think strategic reserve, what comes to mind? Probably, giant underground caverns filled with oil, or maybe Fort Knox stacked to the ceiling with gold bars, right? It's always been about physical stuff, commodities that are vital for national security in an emergency. But now, for the very first time, the US government is saying, hey, this purely digital thing, this cryptocurrency, belongs in that same super elite category. It's a huge shift in thinking.
Which brings us to the big question, the one everyone is asking. Why? Why Bitcoin, and why do this now? The government's whole argument, it turns out, is tied directly to what makes Bitcoin, well, Bitcoin. So to really understand the why behind this move, we got to do a super quick refresher on the what. All right, let's dive in. What is Bitcoin, really?
Okay, the key word here, the most important concept, is decentralized. Think about it. With dollars or euros, you have a central bank, a government, someone in charge. With Bitcoin, there's no CEO, no central headquarters. It's a global network that runs on its own, peer-to-peer. Anyone can use it, and it's all held together by this really clever piece of tech called the blockchain.
So what's a blockchain? Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like a public record book or a digital ledger. But here's the magic trick. This ledger isn't in one place. It's copied and shared across thousands of computers all over the world. Every single transaction gets added as a new block in a chain, and once it's in there, it's pretty much set in stone. You can't go back and change it. This is what makes the whole system both transparent and unbelievably secure.
So here's how a transaction actually happens, in simple terms. You decide to send some Bitcoin. Your transaction gets broadcast out to this huge global network. Then all these computers, we call them miners, they compete to bundle your transaction with others into a new block and add it to the chain. The big takeaway? The network itself does all the work of verifying and confirming. There's no bank, no middleman, no central authority needed to say, okay, this is legit. The system polices itself.
Okay, so that's the tech. But how does that lead us to the government calling it digital gold? Well, if you look at the executive order, they actually spell it out. They point to two very specific qualities. And here they are, scarcity and security. That's it. These are the two pillars holding up the entire argument for why the US is doing this. So let's break down exactly what they mean when we're talking about Bitcoin. This number right here, 21 million, this is everything. This is at the heart of the whole digital gold idea. See, unlike regular money, which a government can just decide to print more of whenever they want, Bitcoin has a built-in, unchangeable limit. Only 21 million will ever exist. That's it. It's not a policy, it's math. And that creates something really rare, provable digital scarcity. And this chart just lays it out perfectly, right? On one side, you've got Bitcoin, a fixed supply that nobody controls. On the other side, you have traditional or fiat currency, an unlimited supply that's totally controlled by governments and central banks. It's that fixed supply, that mathematical limit, that makes people compare it to a physical, finite resource like gold. All right, now for that second pillar, security. And the White House makes a really, really important point here. You've probably heard stories about crypto exchanges getting hacked or people's wallets being stolen. But that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the core Bitcoin protocol, the blockchain itself. And the fact is, it has run 24/7 for more than a decade, and it has never been hacked. For something to be considered a national reserve asset, that kind of track record isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely essential. And look, this isn't some crazy idea that just came out of the blue from the White House. Check this out. Years before this order was even a whisper, the chairman of the Federal Reserve himself, Jerome Powell, called Bitcoin a digital competitor to gold. So you can see this way of thinking has been brewing at the very highest levels of finance and government for a while now. But, this new policy is a complete 180 from where the government started.
this didn't just happen overnight. It's actually the final step in a really long, fascinating journey, from treating Bitcoin as criminal contraband to, well, putting it in the digital equivalent of Fort Knox. And you want to talk about a journey? It's kind of wild to think about. But the very first time Bitcoin was used to buy something in the real world, it was for 2 pizzas. 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 large pizzas. Today, that amount of Bitcoin would be worth, well, billions. It just perfectly shows you the incredible arc here, from a niche experiment for tech nerds to a strategic asset for the world's biggest economy. So, the government's relationship with Bitcoin really started on the wrong foot, you could say. It began with law enforcement busting criminal operations like the infamous Silk Road Marketplace and seizing their crypto. And for years, the standard procedure was super simple: seize it and then sell it at auction. But then, something started to happen. The value of the Bitcoin they were holding just kept going up and up until it was worth billions. And at some point, you got to imagine someone in Washington looked at the numbers and asked, wait a minute, are we sure selling this is the best idea? Now, you might be wondering, are they using our tax dollars to go out and buy a bunch of Bitcoin? And the executive order is crystal clear on this. No, the initial funding for this reserve isn't coming from the open market. It's coming entirely from the Bitcoin the government already owns, from all those criminal seizures and asset forfeitures over the years. And this right here is the real game changer, the single most important sentence in the new policy. Government BTC deposited into the strategic Bitcoin reserve shall not be sold. It's a complete flip from the old seize and sell strategy. The US government just put on its diamond hands, officially becoming a long-term holder.
Okay, so that's the what and the why. But what happens now? What are the ripple effects of a decision this big? Because this has huge implications, not just for crypto, but potentially for the whole global financial system. Let's zoom out and look at the big picture. So let's boil it all down. What are the key takeaways here? First, the US is now officially treating Bitcoin like a strategic asset, right up there with gold. Second, this move gives a huge stamp of legitimacy to the idea of Bitcoin as a real store of value. Third, it signals a massive policy shift from selling to holding for the long term. And finally, you can bet that every other country on the planet is watching this and taking notes. When the US makes a move this big, the rest of the world pays attention.
Which leaves us with one last massive question. For hundreds of years, nations have competed to stack up the most gold. So, is this the beginning of a new kind of global race? A race for digital gold? It's entirely possible that we'll look back on this exact moment as the day the starting pistol for that race was fired.